Hare Krishna. Devotion brings action into our knowledge and knowledge into our action. In this world, especially when we talk about moving towards transcendental reality, within the Vedic context, there are two broad paths. There is the path of action, which is often called as Karma Yoga, and there is the path of knowledge, which is called as Jnana Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is actually the synthesis of both these paths. It integrates, synergizes the positive attributes of both paths. So, devotion brings knowledge into our action and action into our knowledge. First, let's see how this happens. It brings knowledge into our action. In general, in this world, when we act for when we work, then that work causes karmic bondage. And what the Bhagavad Gita does is, it tells us that how to work in a spirit of sacrifice. So, yajnaya acharataha karma samagram praviyate gata sangasya muktasya jnanavastita chetasa yajnaya acharataha karma samagram praviyate. So, in 4.23 it is said that how should we work for? Yajnaya acharataha karma, and it should be jnanavastita chetasa. So, jnanavastita, so situate the consciousness in knowledge and work for the purpose of yajna. Yajnaya acharataha karma. So here what is Krishna talking about? He is saying that bring action, bring knowledge into your action. Krishna is not saying renounce action, but with jnana vastita chetasa, with situating your consciousness in knowledge, then act. Yajnaya acharataha karma. Work for the purpose of sacrifice. Now later on in the Gita, in 9.24, Krishna states that Ahami sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhurevacha, that he is the Lord of all yajnas. He is the ultimate Yajneshwar. So later on in the Bhagavad Gita, further in the 18th chapter, Chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasya matparaha buddhi yogam upashritya macchittaha sarvam bhavat. So Krishna says over here that with your consciousness, offer your work to me and we practice buddhi yoga. So here Krishna is saying that, so bring knowledge into your action. This culminates first in understanding that what causes bondage is not the action itself, but the intention. So if one acts with the intention of sacrifice, then one will not become bound. But further in 18.57, here Krishna states that the highest object, because the highest object of Krishna, object of sacrifice is Krishna. So when we work for His sake, not only will we not be bound, but actually our action will take us towards liberation. So in that way, bring the knowledge of devotion, or rather devotion, the intention of devotion, the desire to serve Krishna, the desire to offer to ourselves to Krishna, that brings the highest knowledge into our action. And similarly, devotion also brings action into our knowledge. Now, many times in the path of knowledge, because it is in Jnana Yoga, it is thought that because action causes bondage, so if one wants to avoid bondage, one should do no activity. One should give up all activity. However, Krishna also states that it is impossible to live without activity. It is impossible to stay entirely inactive, because we are at our core souls who just cannot stay inactive. So therefore, we need to stay connected. We need to stay actively engaged. So the Bhagavad Gita, although it does acknowledge Jnana Yoga as an authorized path, it states that Sannyasastu mahabaho dukkhamapmayogataha. In 5.6 it says that actually if one just merely renounces, then one gets dukkha. If one is not cultivating the connection through yoga. Prior to that, in the 3rd chapter, Krishna says that actually it's impossible for anyone to be inactive. Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jati tishtatya karma kret. Therefore, it's impossible for any person to stay forever inactive. It's in 3.5. And therefore, the Bhagavad Gita describes that at the level of attaining knowledge, in fact at the level of attaining the perfection of knowledge, what does a person do? A person engages in action. So, in 18.54, Krishna said that the person who has attained the perfection of knowledge, what is that? Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kamshati samah sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. So, mad bhaktim labhate param. So what Krishna says is that such a person who attains devotion to me also stays without any such a person who has acquired the knowledge, true knowledge of Brahman, realizing that person attains devotion to me. And what does the person do? Devotion to me actually engages in practical activity, and that is talked about in the next section starting from 18.56-57 onwards. So rather than considering the realm of transcendence as entirely inactive, as devoid of activity, Bhakti helps us to understand that the highest state, that the highest knowledge is not a state of inactivity, but is a state of transcendental activity, a state of activity which is meant to further our growth in knowledge, in the realization that we are parts of Krishna and we are meant to harmoniously function with Him. And in this way, Bhakti, a devotion, brings action to our knowledge also. So thus, by synthesizing the parts of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga embodies the perfection of yoga. Thank you. Hare Krishna.